So, sunshine on Leith. We've got a glorious day. I'm down at Leith shore with bright blue skies, wonderful reflections in the water. And I thought what I would try and focus on, initially at least, is thinking about composition. I've taken loads of photographs and I'll take some more. So those of you who won't actually be at the location on Monday, you've got lots of raw material. And what I've been doing, I've been wandering around doing some thumbnail sketches. This is just a piece of A4 sugar paper. And I think what you need initially really is to be as kind of flexible and lighter foot as possible so that you can not be overwhelmed by all the choice and have a way of making some initial quite quick and very kind of flexible observations. So as you can see, I've divided my A4 sheet into 4 little boxes and I've worked on each box at a time, and I'm drawing just with some willow charcoal and I've got a rubber and a bit of white chalk. So I started over here and the challenge always first, especially when you work on this sort of scale, is to compress your subject. So that's a big boat, and it took me a while actually just to get something dark down for the hull. What I thought would be interesting for a composition really was the attractive shape at that end of the boat, but also some of the ripples, the patterns in the water. So I worked for a while just with the charcoal to gradually reduce that shape. I really wanted to get the yellow funnel in, but I didn't manage. I mean, if I was to develop this into a composition, then maybe I could think again. But that thing of compressing your subject is always a bit of a challenge, and also thinking about editing. I mean, there's vehicles there and houses, buildings with windows. I've ignored the vehicles. I've really simplified the houses, and this is the value, I think, of working small and in a flexible way. You can leave things out, and sometimes you have to leave things out. I would love to get more portholes on the boat, but I can't do that very easily with these materials. So I'm hopefully using them to my advantage. So that's one view. I'll just look at one or two others as well. So I think it definitely helps to move around. I've obviously been struck by ocean mist, this fabulous big boat, and I'm trying it from another viewpoint. Also trying it portrait. So again, it's good just to vary your approach, look at things from different angles, just wander around. I haven't actually shown you a viewfinder, but I really ought to be holding a viewfinder up in different directions just to see what's included and whether I want to include some of those things in my drawing. But again, it's a vast boat. It took me a while to get all of that boat into my little rectangle. I wasn't that keen on the flats in the distance, but I wanted something in the distance, so I've suggested them, but I've not gone into any detail. Sometimes looking with your eyes half closed is useful. You see less, and with a ship like this I won't see all the railings and the portholes. I'll just see, with my eyes half closed, a dark front and maybe then some of the lighter areas. So I see the strong contrasts, and they're often the important things. But I've tried to think about sort of context as well. How much water will I get? Something of the quayside, which I've barely noted, but it's there creating some perspective, which I think would be useful in this particular composition. People always comment on how overwhelming it is when you come somewhere like this. There's so much to see. What are you going to draw? Where do you start? And sometimes you can find almost kind of natural frames, windows, a tree with overhanging branches can be a great frame which will isolate part of a scene, looking through a window and so on. Here we've got this walkway which is giving me a view through. You probably can't see that very well, the shadows are on my drawing, but it's giving me a view through to the boat here, which I want to include. So just using a frame like that is acting like a viewfinder, really. It's helping me identify something, and that will hopefully be what I bring out in my drawing. But again, it's all nice and small scale, and so I can manage what I'm seeing and hopefully translate that into something which can be understood. And in this particular view, so I'm seeing through the walkway, but I also quite like the bridge. And again, I'm editing. There's a lot I've left out. I want the boat. I might have the walkway here as part of a frame, and something down here, maybe the police box, so that I've got a focus, a subject, which is my Mary of Guise boat. But I'm not cluttering up my composition with too much else. And I think again, quite importantly, I'm thinking about perspective and distance. There's a little bit of the quayside that I can work with there to create some depth. So I've wandered all the way around this ship, and I've come to this particular view, looking into the light. I find I often respond well to tonal contrast, so looking into the light I get much more of that effect, silhouetted shapes, and there's a nice combination of the view down here into the little boat in the shadow of the ship. And although I'm close to this ship, so it's quite hard to draw on a small scale, I feel like there's a potential in that I'd like to work with. So let me show you my drawing, if you can see it. Something like that. So it's a challenge because I'm so near, but I do think there's a real value in forcing yourself to work small, because it's the equivalent of standing way back and really having the artist's eye view. As the artist, we have to be able to have an enormous kind of overview of the image that we're creating, so that we can manipulate it in such a way that we get people to see certain things, to see some things and to ignore others. Don't draw what you see, draw what you want others to see. And what I want people to see is this fantastic light, this massive dark ship, and then nestling in its shadow, this little dinghy. So I can do so much of that with my charcoal and chalk, and I have to do some of the other things, some of the editing, deciding how much of the buildings. I want hardly anything of the buildings, but I do want something that suggests some depth. So what I've tended to do is outline the buildings a bit and then just do a little bit of hatching, just to fill them in so that they're solid, so that they might recede without becoming too important. And really what I'm interested in is this big dark ship, the little boat in its shadow, and then some of this kind of rippling surface of the water. So having to do it on that scale, frustrating though it is, it sorts an awful lot of things out for me, and it really helps me understand what to include, what to leave out, and something quick like a bit of heightening with chalk. I can also start to see how to create an emphasis, light on the water, I think light on the edge of that little dinghy. So it doesn't look like a dinghy yet, but that's just a quick way of helping me prepare and really save a lot of time on what I might go on to do. So having chosen this spot, I'm going to set up now and probably do a bit of charcoal rub away drawing, and maybe some colour. So because I'm looking into the light, it does tend to mean there's not necessarily much light on my drawing. So I hope you can see what I do, but it'll be the usual technique of covering the page with some charcoal, which really like working on the grey sugar paper, and I think it's a very helpful way of allowing you to save emphasis until you've begun to understand what you're after, what's going on. So I cover the page and I had a plan. I should really be looking at my thumbnail sketch to see exactly what I had identified, but I put it away, so I can't. I think it was something like this. So to get the big hull of the ship, and then in the shadow, and I might actually want to move the little boat. So not just editing in the sense of leaving things out, but even moving things around. It's something I want to do. So starting with the charcoal rub away technique, I find I can make very quick changes. I've already said that I'm really close to this ship, so I'm making things, compressing things. I mean, the quay side over there actually is tiny compared with the height of the ship. But just through doing my little study, I know what the kind of relationship is that I'm after. I want this big ship to take up most of the drawing space, most of the image. So just by working like that, I can push things around, and a bit like putting my chalk onto my grey paper, I can already start to use the eraser the way I might have used white chalk, and that helps me sort out some of the tonal relationships, and it also gives me texture, of course. So there's something very interesting about this texture of light on the water that I want to work with. So what I'm doing initially, I really want to get the relationship between these main shapes established. I'm not drawing portholes or anything like that. I'm just really trying to get that composition idea working. And if I find that I'm drawn into railings and things, then I have to stop myself. But what I also find at this stage is I rather like that treatment. You know, what's going on in that drawing is nice and atmospheric. You know, it maybe looks like more of a misty day than I'm really experiencing, but because of the technique, nothing is too definite, and I think I should hang on to that quality. And when I find that I'm making things more definite, it might be an idea just to smudge and take things back a bit. So I'm getting to a point where I can't get much more charcoal on, so I'm going to spray it in a moment, but I did want to just sort out something to do with the background. I'm taking off some light for the sky and for maybe the quayside across the water, but I don't want to get into those buildings. I would much rather be bringing out more of the boat, so I am getting to railings and things maybe a bit early, But what I'm going to do now is spray it so that I can actually get darker, and if I need to lighten things I may not be able to rub them off, but I can start applying chalk and colour. I was a little bit too enthusiastic with my charcoal, with my fixative. It's got very wet, but it does mean if I can actually now darken some of these areas, and that's perhaps a point where I'm starting to add some definition. Anyway, it's really nice to be able to go from a dark grey, a sort of charcoal grey, into a black. So I might use that as a way of adding yet more contrast. I might also be ready to start doing work in colour. Because I've sprayed the surface, and start putting in some contrasting colours. Some amazing warm blue on the water. It's maybe a bit warm enough. I should have learnt my warm and cool lessons by now. I'd rather a warmer blue, but anyway, there's another kind of greeny brown in the water. Contrast. So in the way that using the chalk on the little thumbnail sketches, or the rubber in this rubberway drawing, I've been starting to bring out some emphasis. I can start using colour in the same way. And I can put those colours over the monochrome charcoal drawings. Actually that is rubbish, that blue, isn't it? I need a much warmer blue. I don't know if I almost need to go to a purple. So I would start using colour then to add some depth, and to try and develop this idea that I found in my thumbnail sketch, this relationship between the little craft down here and the big boat. So I've made it look rather a dingy day. It's a fantastically blue sky day, so I need to get a bit more colour into my sky, but I've been thrown horribly by the water and the failure to get a warm blue in there, so I've got to work on that. Maybe need to get a bit more colour in the sky just to balance those two. So really what I've tried to demonstrate to you then is going from those thumbnail sketches, having a really good look around, making some choices. I've ended up centering everything on this particular boat, but I did try and do something here which isn't just the boat, it's what's happening in the shadows and the reflections and so on. So I'll be sending you with this video some photographs taken from different points around this location, and I hope that you can then find some material in that you can use to develop some of your own compositions. I'll be seeing some people here on Monday, and I I'll be able to work from Leith, and those of you working at home, we can have a little preview on Monday of some of your ideas. And if I were to then take these studies, something like this, back to the studio, I would then be able to work it up into a painting or a mixed media piece that could perhaps be created partly through my drawings that I'm doing here, and partly through maybe even some of the photographic references. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you on Monday, when I hope the sun shines.